Right. Ready for a deep dive into a debate that has the photography world kind of fired up.
Oh, yeah, this one got intense.
It all started with like this seemingly simple question about what gear is best for baseball photography. But then...
Things escalated quickly. Some strong opinions started flying around.
So you shared with me some analysis of this whole online back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
Between, let's call him Rational Ron,
Oh, yeah.
who is a national team photographer who advocates for professional-grade gear.
Right.
And Passionate Paul, a part-time sports photographer who believes that passion is
Really more important.
more important than equipment.
Every time.
So where do things start to get heated?
Well, Ron starts off by arguing that the 7200 millimeter lens, which is a very popular choice for photographers,
Yeah.
just isn't good enough for serious baseball photography, particularly if you want to get those like pro-level shots.
Interesting.
He specifically calls out its limitations when you're in the photographer's pit at a major game.
So he's saying that the 7200 is a good lens, just not the best choice
Yeah.
for that specific scenario?
That specific scenario.
Exactly.
That's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah, it is.
Like, it's almost like bringing a butter knife to a steak dinner.
I like that.
You can technically use it,
You can.
but it's not going to be
Not going to be the best.
the most enjoyable experience.
Yeah, and Ron isn't saying the 7200 is a bad lens.
Right.
He's just saying it might not be the best if you're in that fast-paced professional setting,
Okay.
like a Major League Baseball game.
Makes sense.
And he's all about, you know, being prepared, having the right tools for the job, delivering those consistent results, particularly when the pressure's on.
I get that, but doesn't that also play into Passionate Paul's argument about expensive gear creating this, like,
Oh, absolutely.
barrier to entry?
Yeah.
Not everyone can afford to drop
Thousands of dollars.
tons of cash on these specialized lenses, especially if you're just starting out or...
Right, or if you have a tighter budget.
Yeah. Paul makes a valid point there. You know, the financial realities of many photographers are very real.
Yeah.
He's arguing that this focus on expensive gear creates this like elite club mentality, making it seem like you need to have, you know, top of the line equipment to even be considered a real photographer.
To be taken seriously.
Yeah, and he feels like it's more about the passion, the creativity, the storytelling, you know.
Regardless of your
budget.
Yeah, that definitely resonates with a lot of people.
Oh, for sure.
But Ron did offer some alternative lens suggestions.
Right. He did.
That aren't necessarily top of the line.
Right.
But still give you a little bit more reach for baseball.
Yeah, he mentioned lenses like the Nikon 180 600 millimeter,
Okay.
the Sony 200 600 millimeter, and the Canon 100 500 millimeter. These lenses have a longer focal length, which means you can zoom in closer from a distance.
Right. And they're generally more affordable than some of the pricier pro-level options.
So there are options out there.
There are.
That won't break the bank.
But still give you the reach you need.
Exactly.
For those big baseball moments.
That's Ron's point. You don't need the absolute best to take great photos.
Right.
But you do need the right gear
Yeah.
for the specific type of photography you're doing, and that can make a difference.
Especially in a professional setting.
Particularly in a professional setting.
Okay, so we've got Ron advocating for this level of professionalism that includes having the right gear being prepared, and Paul's kind of pushing back against the idea that you need expensive equipment to be successful in photography.
Absolutely.
So where do the voices from the crowd land on all of this?
Well, it's interesting to see a lot of comments from photographers who resonate with both sides of the argument.
Really?
Yeah, some people really echo Ron's emphasis on professional standards, particularly in a high-stakes environment like the photographer's pit at a major game.
Right.
They argue that it's not just about taking pretty pictures. It's about being reliable and delivering consistent results and meeting the demands of the job.
So there's a sense of responsibility that comes with being a professional photographer.
Absolutely.
You need to be prepared.
You need to be prepared.
And equipped to handle whatever situation you're in.
Exactly.
It's kind of like how you wouldn't want a heart surgeon operating on you with rusty tools.
That's a very vivid analogy.
Even if they have a great bedside manner.
I see your point.
Right.
In those professional settings, the stakes are often higher.
Yeah.
And there's a certain expectation of technical proficiency and reliability that goes beyond just personal passion.
But on the flip side, there are plenty of voices supporting Paul's message of inclusivity and accessibility.
Oh, yeah.
They argue that photography should be open to everyone, regardless of
budget or equipment.
budget or equipment.
For sure.
They emphasize creativity, storytelling, and that unique vision that each photographer brings to the table.
It's like they're saying, let's not make this an exclusive club
Right.
where only those with the most expensive gear get to sit at the table.
Yeah.
You know, they really champion this idea that passion and a unique perspective can really shine through.
Regardless of the tools.
Regardless of what you have at your disposal.
So we've got this push and pull, this tension between the need for these professional standards and the desire for accessibility and inclusivity in photography.
It's a real tension.
And it feels like there's a lot to unpack here.
Oh, yeah.
Different layers to this debate.
Absolutely.
That go beyond the gear itself.
You hit the nail on the head.
It's not just about lenses.
No, it's about what truly matters in this art form.
Yeah.
Is it about that technical mastery, the pursuit of the perfect shot with the best possible equipment? Or is it about the heart, the story, the human connection behind the lens?
That's where it gets really interesting.
That's where it gets really interesting.
But before we dive into that, I'm curious about something else.
Okay.
We've talked about the arguments themselves. But what about how those arguments are presented?
Yeah.
Ron's approach seems to be more analytical.
Right.
While Paul brings in a little bit of humor and sarcasm.
A little bit, yeah.
Do you think that their communication styles impacted how people receive their messages?
That's a great question. And I think the way we communicate can be just as important as the message itself, especially in a heated online debate.
Right.
So let's take a closer look at their communication styles and see how they might have influenced this whole conversation. Welcome back.
So before we jumped into the fascinating world of communication styles, we were unpacking the arguments of rational Ron and passionate Paul.
Right. And, you know, it's funny how this debate has become like this Rorschach test for photographers.
It is. I see what you did there.
Everyone's projecting their own experiences and values onto this whole gear versus passion debate.
Totally.
And that's what makes it so interesting.
It's so true.
But I think before we get too deep into the psychology of it all,
Right.
we need to remember that there are like real-world consequences to this.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
This isn't just theoretical.
Yeah, it's impacting how photographers think about their work.
Yeah.
Their gear, their career paths, especially for those just starting out.
Absolutely.
Who are trying to navigate this complex industry.
It can be overwhelming.
Yeah, it really can.
So
let's bring this down to earth a little bit.
Okay.
And look at some real-world examples.
Okay.
Okay, so we've talked about Ron's emphasis on professionalism and Paul's focus on passion.
Right.
But what happens when those two worlds collide? What about photographers who manage to achieve incredible things with limited resources?
Interesting.
Does that undermine Ron's argument? Or are they just proving Paul's point?
That's a great question.
It is.
We need to see how this debate plays out in the real world.
Right.
Beyond just the arguments online.
Beyond the theories.
Do you have any stories that might shed some light on this?
I do. Let's start with a photographer. We'll call her Sarah.
Okay.
Okay. Imagine this. Sarah's armed with just a basic camera, not a fancy telephoto lens.
Got it.
But she has this burning passion for wildlife photography.
I love that. So she starts documenting the diverse bird life in her local park.
Wait, so she's trying to capture these fast-moving birds
She is.
with just a basic kit lens.
That's right.
That's ambitious.
It is. It's like trying to catch a fly with chopsticks.
Yeah.
Not impossible, but it takes some serious skill.
And patience.
And patience, exactly. And Sarah had both.
I love that.
Her passion fueled her dedication, and her patience allowed her to wait for those perfect moments.
Wow.
And you know what? Despite her limited equipment, her images were captivating.
Really?
They really captured the beauty of her subjects and resonated with viewers.
So it wasn't about the gear.
Right.
It was about her eye, her ability to connect with the birds and tell their stories.
It was.
Through her photos.
Exactly.
Sometimes I wonder if having limitations forces you to be more creative.
You know, that's a really insightful point.
More resourceful.
I think so. When you don't have all the fancy bells and whistles,
Right.
You really have to rely on your instincts, your observation skills, and that can lead to some incredible images.
Yeah.
Truly unique images.
Totally. So she turned her limitations into an advantage.
She did.
But what about the professional side of things?
Yeah.
Did she manage to turn her passion into a career?
Her story gets even more interesting.
Right.
As she shared her work online, her talent and passion were obvious.
Yeah.
And she started to attract a following.
Cool.
And eventually, that caught the eye of local newspapers and nature magazines.
Wow.
They were drawn to her unique perspective and the emotion in her photos.
So she wasn't shooting for National Geographic or anything.
Right.
but she still managed to make an impact and build a career doing what she loved.
She did.
That's inspiring.
It is. It really challenges this notion that you need a top-of-the-line kit to be taken seriously as a photographer.
Totally. But let's flip the script for a moment.
Okay.
What happens when a photographer has all the best gear, but maybe loses that initial spark?
Loses that passion that got them into photography in the first place.
It's like that saying, be careful what you wish for. You might just get it. Having all the gear won't guarantee success or happiness.
So true.
If you lose sight of why you started taking photos in the first place.
That's a good point. And that brings us to the story of Mark.
Okay.
A seasoned professional photographer who had it all.
He did.
Years of experience, an incredible portfolio.
The most sought-after lenses and gadgets.
He was living the dream, at least on paper.
On paper he was.
But something shifted.
Yeah, somewhere along the way something changed.
Did he get burnt out?
I think that was part of it. He became so focused on the technical aspects, on chasing the perfect shot with his high-end gear, that he lost sight of the emotional connection that drew him to photography in the first place.
It happens.
It does. It's like he was going through the motions,
Yeah.
capturing technically flawless images that lacked soul.
So he became a prisoner of his own success.
Trapped in this cycle of perfectionism and technical mastery.
It happens.
Did he manage to break free?
He did, but it took a radical shift in perspective.
Okay.
He decided to step away from his usual high-pressure assignments and embark on a more personal project.
I like that.
He packed a simple camera bag,
Okay.
leaving behind all that bulky equipment, and set off on a road trip,
Oh, wow.
seeking inspiration in the everyday moments.
So he traded his telephoto lenses for a simpler setup.
He did.
His structured assignments for the freedom of the open road.
He did. He was trying to reconnect with that essence of photography, the joy of capturing moments, for the pure love of it.
It seems like he was really trying to find his way back to why he started taking pictures in the first place.
Exactly. And you know what? It worked.
Really?
It did, by stripping away the distractions, the pressure to perform, the obsession with technical perfection.
Right.
He rediscovered his passion. He started seeing the world with fresh eyes.
That's great.
He found beauty in the ordinary and captured those moments with an authenticity that had been missing.
That's amazing.
It was really beautiful to see that transformation.
That's such a powerful story.
It is.
It shows that sometimes you need to step back, simplify, reconnect with your core.
Yeah.
But it also makes me wonder, is this something that can be taught, or is it something that every photographer has to discover on their own?
That's a question that's been debated for as long as photography has existed.
Yeah.
Is it about mentorship? Learning from those who've walked the path before you?
Right.
Or is it about that inner spark, that undeniable drive that can't be taught? It's like the nature versus nurture debate applied to photography.
And just like that debate, there's probably no easy answer.
Probably not.
It's likely a combination of both.
I think so. A delicate dance between external influence and internal drive.
You hit the nail on the head again.
You too.
It's about finding that balance.
It is.
Right? Recognizing that while we can learn from others, ultimately our path as photographers is uniquely our own.
It is. And, you know, these stories of Sarah and Mark highlight some important truths that can guide us along the way.
So what are those key takeaways?
What can we learn?
What can we learn from their journeys that might help other photographers, especially those who are trying to find their footing in this industry?
Well, first we need to remember that equipment, while important, doesn't define you as a photographer.
Right.
Passion, creativity, a unique perspective. Those are the things that really matter.
Right.
A 70-200 millimeter lens might be perfect for one photographer, and another photographer might thrive with a longer focal length. And that's okay.
That's okay.
It is.
So it's about finding the tools that best suit your style.
Exactly.
And vision, not just chasing the latest and greatest.
Yeah, not about keeping up with the Joneses.
Right, not about what everyone else is using.
Exactly.
But being intentional with your choices.
Right.
Understanding your tools and using them to tell your stories in the best way possible.
Yes, the camera is just an instrument.
It is
an extension of your vision.
I love that.
But just like a musician needs to master their instrument, photographer needs to understand the technical aspects of their craft.
So it's not just about learning how to use a camera. It's about understanding light,
composition,
storytelling.
storytelling.
All the other elements that come together to create a great photograph.
It's about seeking out experience, learning from others' mistakes.
And developing your own unique style.
Yes, and I think most importantly,
Yeah.
it's about never losing sight of that initial spark.
The passion.
The passion that drew you to photography in the first place.
Nurturing that creative fire.
Yeah, even when you face challenges, setbacks, or you see a shiny new piece of equipment.
Right. Because sometimes those things can lead you astray.
They can. They can.
So in a way, both Ron and Paul are right.
Yeah.
Right. Professionalism and passion
They can coexist.
can coexist.
They complement each other.
Yeah, it's about finding that sweet spot, that balance.
Exactly. The balance between technical mastery and creative expression.
That's the beauty of photography.
It is.
It's where technical skill and artistic vision collide.
It is a beautiful collision.
A 7200 can be just as powerful as a top-of-the-line telephoto.
Depending on the photographer.
Depending on the photographer.
And their intent.
So we're reminded that there is no one path to success
Right.
in photography.
It's a journey.
Exploration.
Experimentation.
Constant learning.
Constant learning. Okay, so speaking of journeys, I think it's time to bring this conversation full circle.
Let's do it.
And revisit those arguments
Okay.
that sparked this whole debate in the first place.
Back to Ron and Paul.
All right, so back to where it all started. Rational Ron, advocating for that professional grade gear, and specifically questioning the 7200 as a go-to lens for baseball photography.
Right.
And passionate Paul arguing that that emphasis on expensive equipment creates these barriers. Yeah, unnecessary barriers.
That passion should be the driving force.
Exactly.
And remember, Ron wasn't saying that the 7200 is a bad lens.
No.
Just that it might not be the ideal workhorse lens for consistently capturing those epic baseball moments from the photographer's pit.
Right, he was talking about that limited reach.
Yeah.
Putting you at a disadvantage in a fast-paced environment.
Particularly a professional environment.
Exactly.
He even suggested some alternative lenses.
He did.
Right? With longer focal lengths that might not break the bank, but would still give you that extra reach.
Right, those crucial baseball shots.
The Nikon 180-600, the Sony 200-600, the Canon 100-500.
Yeah, he had some good suggestions.
It's all about choosing the right tool for the job right.
It is.
It's like a plumber wouldn't show up to a job with just a wrench.
Exactly. They need a whole toolbox.
Right. A whole toolbox full of specialized tools to handle all the different situations.
Absolutely. And I think that's where Ron's argument really makes sense.
Right.
It's not about having the most expensive gear. It's about being prepared.
Yeah.
Understanding the demands of the situation and having the right tools to deliver
Right.
those consistent results.
And especially in a professional setting where your clients are relying on you.
Especially in a professional setting.
But Paul's counter-argument is equally compelling.
It is.
Right. He argued that by focusing solely on this expensive gear, it makes it seem like you need to have this top-of-the-line kit to even be considered a photographer.
Right, to even be taken seriously.
And that can be really discouraging for people just starting out.
Yeah.
Right? Or people who are working with a really tight budget.
Absolutely. It's like telling someone they can't join the basketball team unless they have the latest signature sneakers.
Right, exactly.
Sure, those shoes might give them a little edge, but it's really their skill and dedication that's going to determine their success.
And that's where Paul's emphasis on passion and resourcefulness comes in.
Yeah, he believes that even with limited equipment, you can still create stunning images and tell really compelling stories.
It's about pushing those boundaries right.
It is.
And being creative.
It's like that old saying, necessity is the mother of invention.
Right.
Sometimes limitations force us to think outside the box.
So I've got these two seemingly contrasting viewpoints.
We do.
Right. On the one side, the professional standards, having the right tools, delivering consistent results. On the other side, celebrating that passion.
The creativity.
The ability to make an impact.
Regardless of your budget.
But as we saw with Sarah and Mark, it's not really in either situation, is it?
No, not at all. It's about finding that balance, that synergy between technical proficiency and artistic passion.
So it's not that equipment can't enhance your capabilities.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's your vision.
It is.
That brings those images to life.
Absolutely. It's like a chef with a state-of-the-art kitchen. You might have all the fancy gadgets, but it's their culinary skills, their creativity and passion for food that makes those dishes so unforgettable.
The camera is just a tool.
It is a means to an end.
It's the photographer who brings the story to life.
Right.
It's exciting because it makes us ask those fundamental questions.
It does?
about what really matters in photography.
What are our priorities? What do we value?
And those are questions worth thinking about,
Yeah.
no matter what your experience level is or your budget is.
At the end of the day, you need to find your own voice.
Right, your own style.
Create work that is meaningful to you.
Whether you're shooting with a 7200 or a top-of-the-line telephoto, it's your passion.
It's your dedication. Perspective.
It's what makes your work stand out.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm left with this thought.
Okay.
The debate between equipment and passion isn't a debate at all. It's a conversation.
It is.
It's an exploration.
It's a journey.
Of this multifaceted nature of photography.
Absolutely.
And it's a reminder that there's no one right way to do this.
There isn't.
And that's the beauty of it.
It is. Whether you're a seasoned pro or an enthusiastic amateur, it's that passion.
That drive to capture moments.
To tell stories.
Share your perspective with the world.
It's about finding that balance.
It is.
Between the technical skill and the artistic expression.
Beautifully said.
It's about embracing the journey, the challenges, the triumphs.
Yeah.
The constant evolution.
The constant evolution.
And that's what makes photography so captivating.
It is so captivating.
So here's a thought to leave you with.
Okay.
Imagine a young photographer, eager to capture the world through their lens.
I love it.
They're faced with this debate.
This age-old debate.
Do they invest in the professional gear?
The lenses rational Ron recommends.
Or do they follow passionate Paul's advice?
Right.
And focus on developing their skills?
With the equipment they have.
What path would you guide them towards?
That's a great question.
What does that say about your own values?
And priorities.
As a photographer?
It's a question worth pondering.
There's no right or wrong answer.
No.
Just different paths that lead to different destinations.
So true.
And the most important thing is to choose the path that resonates with your soul.
Yes.
The one that fuels your passion and lets your creativity just flourish.
Absolutely.
Photography is more than just equipment.
It's more than technical skill.
It's about the heart, the story, the connection between the photographer and the world.
Capturing those fleeting moments.
That make life worth living.
And sharing them.
In a way that connects us all.
It's about that magic.
When technical mastery meets artistic expression.
Yes.
It's about that constant pursuit.
Yeah.
Of the perfect shot, even if it doesn't exist.
Even if it doesn't exist.
It's about the passion, the dedication.
The belief in the power of images to change the world.
So go out there, embrace your passion.
Yeah.
Explore your creativity and never stop capturing those moments.
The moments that make your heart sing.
Because photography is a reflection of ourselves.
Of our values.
And our own perspective on the world.
And that's a gift worth sharing.
It is. And with that, we wrap up another deep dive.
Another deep dive complete.
Thanks for joining us.
It's been a pleasure.
On this exploration of equipment, passion, and the heart of photography.
Until next time.
Keep shooting.
Keep creating.
And keep those lenses focused.
On the things that matter most.